Welcome to another video by AskMath.com. Let's read the directions to this problem. Graph the system of inequalities, given y is greater than or equal to -2 and y is less than 3x minus 1. Remember that a system of inequalities just means two or more inequalities. So we have two inequalities here, and they're inequalities because these aren't equal signs, they are inequality symbols. To graph them, we have to remember what we learned about equations, and we learned a form y equals mx plus b. You might have heard this called slope-intercept form, and the reason is that this is the slope and this is the y-intercept, and we use them actually in the opposite direction as we say the name. So it's slope-intercept form, but we actually do this first when we graph, and we do this second when we graph. And remember that slope is always made out of a rise over a run. It's always a fraction, and if it's not a fraction, you can always put it over 1, divide by 1, because that doesn't change the value of whatever number you had. Okay, same thing for these, except that we have inequality symbols instead of equal signs. We'll see in just a little bit how that makes a difference. So let's go ahead and just make a graph. And let's write down our first inequality. Okay, now you notice I left a little space here, and the reason is that we are missing our mx, right? We don't see any x here. So this ends up being our y-intercept, which is what we do first, and a y-intercept means that it crosses the y-axis, and where you start is the origin, and from the origin you go down 2. And the reason that you go down 2 is that it's a -2, and negative means down, right? Positive would mean up. Okay, so from the origin, down 2. 1, 2, draw a point, and that is the point. We haven't gone to the left or to the right on the x-axis, so the x value is 0, but we have gone down 2, which is a -2 for the y value. Okay, starting at this point, we need to follow the slope, but we don't have a slope. Actually, we do, though. This is a slope of 0, 0 times x. And 0 times anything is 0, which is why everything disappears, including the x. So when you don't see an x, that just means that it's a 0x. And remember that you can always divide any number by 1. For example, 0 divided by 1 is still 0. So we haven't changed anything, we've just turned it into a fraction. Okay, so starting at your y-intercept, you're going to follow the rise and run of your slope. And remember that for a rise, positive would mean up, and a negative would mean down, and for a run, positive would mean right, and negative would mean left. Starting here, we have a rise of 0, which means that we don't move up or down at all. We have a run of +1. Positive means go to the right. So from here, we're going to go to the right 1. And I've run right into my other label. That's fine. So we'll just do that. Okay, so this line goes through these 2 points, which actually just means that it's a horizontal line. And we could see that here because the slope is 0, and that's what a slope of 0 means, is that it's like, flat ground, no slope. All right, now the new part. This isn't an equation, there's no equal sign, it's an inequality symbol, and so this part, we have to read it, and it says y is greater than or equal to. Now, the or equal part means that it's a solid line like we've drawn. Just like when you say equal in an equation, it's a solid line. The greater than part means shade above. And this is the new part. This is what the difference between inequalities and equations are, is that you shade either above or below the line. And so when you have this format, y equals mx plus b, for an inequality, you can follow the directions by reading what that says, and greater means above. Okay? So the shading would go all the way up forever. Okay, next inequality is y is less than 3x minus 1. And same thing, we're going to start at the y-intercept. From the origin, we go down 1, draw a point. That point is 0, -1. And then from there, we're going to follow the slope, and again, turn it into a fraction by putting it over 1. And so starting at your y-intercept, you go +3, that's up 3. 1, 2, 3. And then from there, we're going to go +1, which is right 1, over here, draw our dot. So the slope has gone up 3, right 1, and now we connect those with a line. Now, before we do that, notice that the inequality symbol does not have the or equal. So one way that you can do this is you can draw a straight line and then erase part of it, or you can do this right away and just do a dashed line, which is what I'm going to do because I don't have an eraser. And the reason that we're doing dashed is because we don't have that or equal. And a dashed line means that a point on the line, such as these 2 points, for example, is not part of the solution to the system of inequalities. It's not included. So whereas a point on the solid line would be part of the solution. That's the difference there. Okay, now the last part is we read this, y is less than, and less means shade below. So for this line, we're going to shade everything below the line that we just drew. And now, although the problem didn't ask us for it, the solution to a system of inequalities is the part where the solution from one overlaps with the solution of the other. So you can see shading here for just one of the lines and shading here for just the other line, but here the shading overlaps. So I'm just going to kind of shade that in a little bit of blue. This overlap area is the solution to the system of inequalities, and it includes this solid line right here. Now, not over here because it doesn't overlap with the shading from this dashed line. So it's just this part of the solid line, everything above, not the dashed line. And so everything blue there is part of the solution to the system. That is the end of the problem. Thanks for watching another video by AskMath.com.